Fitz, Penn State basketball pulled off the unthinkable last night. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts is we got like 10 questions. None of them are about basketball. So I'm really sorry. That game was too late, man. That's, I'm in bed by tip for those 9 o'clock games, but no, unbelievable effort, unbelievable finish. I saw some clips this morning when I woke up.
Yeah, you watched the replay.
I watched, yeah, exactly. But that's great. And it's got you in a casual mood, no cardigan today. So it must be a nice day in the Valley. So that's good.
Took a shower and everything.
Yeah, it's a good win. And let's go to the first mailbag question from me. Nate, is Penn State going to make the NCAA tournament?
Ooh, that's a curveball. I don't know. I don't know. Listen, I've learned if I've learned anything from this team, it is to expect nothing. Do not set expectations. So maybe, and if they win on Sunday, that will be a huge step towards getting there, because very likely at 10 wins in the conference with kind of a flurry of quad ones at the end, it should be enough. It should be enough. But it depends on seeding and the Big Ten tournament, all that stuff. So
you would at some point, Penn State basketball would have to get the benefit of the doubt, and that's just something that doesn't happen, though, right?
There's resumes and blind things, and I don't think it's based on simply, hey, this is Penn State, let's exclude them. I think that they are very, very much poised for, at minimum, Dayton first four if they win on Sunday. With the opportunity to improve on that considerably based on what they do in the Big Ten tournament. But they have to avoid, this is where you get into the weeds. They can't fall to the 11 seed and have to play Minnesota. And that's still in play right now for them in the first. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay, that's 2 minutes of Penn State basketball. We're going to move on.
Let it happen.
Welcome to the BWI Daily. It's the mailbag show on Thursday. I'm Sean Fitz. He's Nate Bauer. T. Frank, roll the graphic. It's the Thursday before spring break. Yeah, that was awesome. It was the Thursday before spring break. We actually have an open workout to go to later today. Of course, this will be coming out after the open workout. Hopefully you caught coverage on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Always a fun one because we get out to go see them usually max out squatting. And we get to talk to Chuck Loza, used to be Dwight Galt, who was always insightful. Chuck, very insightful as well. Always one of the things that we circle on the calendar and look forward to at the end of February, just before spring break, before they go off to do their separate things for spring break and come back for spring ball in just over a week. So looking forward to all that. Hopefully check out the coverage on the site. Hopefully you follow along with our socials, follow our YouTube page, subscribe to our YouTube page, like this video, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Nate, let's get in the mailbag.
Yeah, let's do it. First question. I'm Papa, I believe.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, it's true. Is there anything to be said about Bo Prabula's total domination of the quarterback workouts? If you checked his collar, I bet it's blue. Funny. Good jokes. We love it. We love it. Fitz, what do you got?
Bo is built for this. So regardless of any scenario where Drew is not available, Bo was like this last year. I mean, if you followed our coverage, I know we were at different sites last year, but everybody kept going back to Bo. He's built for this. He is a guy that works his ass off. He's a guy that you gravitate to in the sense that, can be a captain one day. All the things that you look for in winter workouts, beyond the throwing the football, beyond all the actual football skills, Bo Prabula is great at. Like he works hard. He's really talented as an athlete, very versatile, high competitive nature, things like that. So like this isn't a surprise no matter the scenario. And it was like this a year ago. And Bo was ahead of Drew at this time last year as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's safe to say this is a kid who will start as a quarterback at Penn State at some point in his career, whether that's this year, next year, the year after that. Obviously, there's a bunch to still be determined, but he has that in him. I mean, it is a universal buzz for him, what he brings to the program, how he's respected in the locker room, you name it. I mean, just across the board, have not heard anything really sour, right? I mean, there hasn't been anything that's like, oh, well, if he could just do this. I mean, I think if you're examining, who can make all the throws, yeah, Drew Aller is he's just got that unique special ability as a quarterback, but there's also some intangibles and some things that Bo Prabula does that are warranted in their own right as being very well respected and highly thought of. So yeah, the fact that he also does it in the weight room and in these training sessions that they have in the winter workouts, not a surprise really at all, I don't think. Moving on, Penn State, 2012. What, if any, contact can the staff have with Dante Cephas?
They're good on contact with Dante Cephas. So originally this was explained in the sense that he was going to go back to Kent State, withdrawal from the portal, finish out and graduate in the spring. He's still in the portal, which keeps, it doesn't really change many things. Coaches from other schools can still reach out too, but it gives Penn State the ability to keep in contact legally and have the lines of communication open between the two sides. So, when we were saying that back in December, January, when it became apparent that he was going to go back to Kent State to finish, the plan was to get out of the portal. But if he stays in the portal, it doesn't really change anything. They're gonna have the ability to get with him with workouts and talk to him and stay up and stay on him about finishing out his academic thing. So they can have open lines of communication because he's still in the portal.
Be interesting to know what Kent State permits him to do, if any, you know what I mean, like within the program, because certainly that's you can either be sour or not, right?
Yeah,
I mean there have been
situations in, like, yeah, the situation that they're in, like, you kind of have to, like, this is a scenario where you're a MAC school or you're a lower level school that you're starting to realize that one of your best pitches can be come here, get better, and go to a bigger school. Like, that's how the portal has started to work. So if you block these guys, if you make it harder for these guys to transfer, that's going to come back and bite you in a different area, later with other guys. So Kent State, and they lost their staff, they lost a bunch of coaches, they lost a ton of players, they lost everybody. So they're kind of scrambling to begin with. So I don't think they're going to put their energy into making it harder for one of their best players. And one of their, that's a marketing chip for them too. Like, here's our guy, our receiver, I think it was quarterbacks at UCLA now, receiver at North Carolina, receiver going to go to Penn State. They had a bunch of guys transfer out, and unfortunately, that's the belly of the beast with the portal and these lower level schools. But that's got to be how you can come back in on the front end and get kids to come to your school, to be honest with you. So it doesn't make any sense for them to block him, to keep it, to make it harder for him to go to a program like Penn State.
Yeah, I meant more along the lines of how much they let him use the facilities and work out and training, all those different things that obviously a program is better positioned to have those resources that a program has. So in any case,
I don't think he's going to Planet Fitness and keeping up with the Penn State. He could.
He could. Poncho 570 asks, who are your top 4 position battles? I mean, that's top 4. Like, that pretty much covers it, right? That will have your fullest attention this spring. What do you got?
Should have just asked for 1 and we would have given him 5 anyway. That's how we do it here.
I mean, tell me to stop talking.
Okay.
Who are yours? What do you got, Fitz?
Well, wide receiver is a wide net because you've got what happens with Keandre Lambert-Smith. Do they move him into the slot? Cephas is not here yet. Do you keep him outside to work with Liam Clifford and Caden Saunders in the slot? How ready is Malik McLean? Where is Malik Mega in all this? Trey Wallace jumps really high. Where does he fit into this? So, like, you have options here. It's just a matter of feeling it out and trying to figure out what your best combinations are. And also, you have a new position coach in Marcus Higgins, and so that's a clean slate for everybody. So you have the ability to make that work. And I didn't even mention Amari Evans, some of those redshirt freshman guys. that can work in there and try and make a dent and make a good early impression. Like this is a good chance to reset for that room. And if you look at what was slated to come back, no matter who the coach was, or a reset was pretty much necessary. So be interested to see how this all comes along with the new guys, with the new guy that's not here yet. And yeah, I think that receiver is it's an obvious and easy pick, but it provides you with a lot of options.
Sure. I've got safety following you up, and not in any specific order, right? It's with Tig Brown leaving and what he kind of represented. Anthony Poindexter has a variety of options, right? I mean, he can play with some of what he does back there as Keaton Ellis. Like some of the storylines of last year don't change in that sense, right? Is Steady Eddie Keaton Ellis versus some of the maybe more intriguing
upside. Yeah.
Upside, right? So how do you balance that, and how do you pick that out, right? How do you rearrange or order that room and go with guys that are comfortable and confident? I mean, the reality, especially at safety, is they're all going to play. A bunch of those guys are going to get to see a ton of reps. So I don't think that's in question. It's just a matter of how it plays itself out. And as is normally the case, I would expect it to not be totally settled through the course of the spring.
Yes, but like settled in the sense that I think those are your four guys, and those are clearly your four guys. So like, it's a matter of like fine tuning things. Jalen Reed's 2 months off of surgery from his injury in the Rose Bowl. So like, can you expect him to be full go? I don't think so. In the spring, Keaton Ellis played a lot of football. So this is going to be a really big spring in terms of opportunity, in terms of reps for Zakee Wheatley, for KJ Winston. Those guys are, I think, going to be very good. It's just a matter of how many reps you can get those guys, because Tig, for everything that he did, he played over 600 snaps last year, like more than 100 more than anybody else on the defense. Like that's pretty ridiculous, and it's going to be tough to fill. You've got talent to do so, but you've got to get those guys reps to get them seasons to put them in that position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Linebacker.
Mike linebacker. That's a position that, you know, people are going to wring their hands about all off season. I don't know how much you get accomplished in the spring between Elsdon and King. Maybe work Keon Wiley in there. Maybe I think the most intriguing thing about the Mike linebacker battle is, do you get Abdul Carter a chance to run in the middle there? Like, because that would be really nice. Like that would be a situation where you could try and figure out how you keep those two linebackers, because you think you've got Carter and Jacobs, and then a gap between whomever is going to take over after that. How do you get those two linebackers on the field? And this is when you fine tune, and you couldn't do that in September, but you can do that in April or March and April. So I think that's the most intriguing thing there at Mike linebacker. I don't think you have a resolution coming out of spring ball, but you get a chance to assess your options there. I think that if it includes Abdul Carter, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. And then I think I'll wrap it up. I think Phil Troutwine has a ton of options on the offensive line. You know, you're going to pay
more than twice as many as he did this time last year. So yes, he has options, and I think he's pretty happy to have that. Those numbers.
Yeah, I think that's completely accurate. You've got a left tackle that you know for sure in Olufashanu. There's no question about that. He will stay there. He will be that. But from there over, and this is in no way to diminish, you know, some of the starting jobs that were won by a Landon Tengwall, a Hunter Norzad. But is Norzad the center? Is that the be all end all? Right? Is you know, where's JB Nelson in this? Where's Vega Ioane? Like Caden Wallace at right tackle, right, versus Drew Shelton. If that's how they want to go, I just think that there's a bunch of players who will all be in the mix there, and it's not necessarily as straightforward as a, hey, this guy is locked into this role. It's finding your five best based on the fact that so many of those guys have position versatility. Like, and that's, you know, obviously they stress that so much in the program anyway, but it really comes into focus, I think, with this group this spring.
And on top of that, you have to remember, like, not all the guys will play a lot. Like Olu, there's no reason for Olu to play 80% of the snaps in spring. So that opens things up for Drew Shelton. That opens some things up for some of the younger guys at tackle. It also, you know, you're thinking Landon's coming off an injury. How much is he going to be able to go? What does that mean for JB Nelson? I think the backup guards in JB Nelson and Vegaglione are closer to the starters than we've seen in some time in terms of like from 1 to 2. So that'll be very interesting. And does that mean, you know, if Tengwall's not able to go, does that mean Drew Shelton gets, you know, Drew Shelton told me a couple of weeks ago that he'll rep in at guard. That's fine. Vegaglione told you that he'll rep in at center or rep in at, you know, they'll get a chance to play around with these things. They just have numbers now. And thinking back to a year ago and wondering if there would be a blue-white game because they had 9 offensive linemen, you could not possibly make 2 teams out of their offensive line. Yeah. They feel a lot better than where they are. So this is a very different approach, different opportunity for them to play around a little bit. And when you think about where Penn State's been with their offensive line, they haven't had an opportunity to play around and tinker with things just because they didn't have the numbers.
Yeah. We got to stop that.
Okay. We're not going to. Okay.
The duration of the show
on kickers, and we'll come back to that one another time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got to move on to the next one.
Yes.
PSU.
Yeah.
Yeah. PSU, and we can't stop. PSU 1986 says Franklin's best draft classes have had 3 players drafted in the first, second, or third rounds. Will the 2025 draft more than double those numbers? I personally see 4, maybe 5 first-round draft picks. A lot of excitement for the freshmen here, Fitz.
A lot of it. And that's an exclamation point at the end. I mean, I would suggest tapping the brakes on that just because people forget how good you have to be drafted in the first 2 rounds. And Penn State has guys that are at that potential. Like you look at that freshman class and the impact that they made in their first year and the potential impact that they can have over the next couple of years. And it's there, no doubt about it. But like these things change very fast. I mean, you think back 2 years, and you and I were talking about this before the show. Think back 2 years and nobody had Olu as a top first round, second round pick. You know, there was potential there, obviously, but like these things change a lot throughout the course of guys developing, other guys developing faster than them. But yeah, I mean, you've got Singleton, Carter, you know, Drew Aller, Denai Dennis Sutton was a 5-star. You've got guys that can really take that next level. And to be on, like on top of that, the guys have the size to do it. Like there's some guys that come in and have the ability and like are really talented and like great players and things like that. But to get to the NFL, to be into those first couple of rounds, unless you are a unicorn, you're going to have prototypical size. And some of those guys, they have it. And that hasn't always been the case with guys that come in and make an impact right away.
Yeah, literally nothing to add. A long way to go. Bergenthal 1. I know John Scott Jr.'s departure was his decision. Was this primarily because he did not like the around-the-clock time required for recruiting and managing 18 to 22-year-olds? And if Deion Barnes was the pick, wouldn't that have been announced by now?
The second part, no, not necessarily, because you want to interview guys. You want to build out that little black book and get the experience from James Franklin's side and from potential coaches where you want to be able to talk to these guys. It's not a situation where like it would be an automatic switch over. Like I think Deion is in the mix like heavily for this job, but at the same time, why would you do that? Like he's here. Like it's not a situation where you're going to lose him if you don't hire him in the next couple of days, weeks, whatever. So I don't think that it's necessary to do that. James Franklin always works on his own clock, and that's how kind of that works. Speaking of clock, the first part of that, I think we've discussed this before. It's a lot easier being a pro coach from a schedule perspective. You know, the pressure is very high at the program as well, but you have the opportunity to have more free time, have more downtime. You don't have to recruit. There is a general manager that does your recruiting for you. And that I cannot imagine for a college coach how inviting that must sound, especially in these down times when you're still having to text and still having to call and still having to do recruiting stuff basically every day.
Yeah, let's reframe what you just said. It's not that the NFL is easier. It's college football coaching stinks. Like it's awful. These guys, I'm being somewhat hyperbolic or.
That's a first. Yeah.
That's not the right word. In any case, they are like miserable because of the time demands. These guys are coming in at the office at 7 o'clock in the morning every day and leaving at 10 o'clock at night, right? It is just all day, every day. There's something to do. There's the calendar never lets up, the recruiting schedule, you name it. It's just not, I mean, legitimately, I've been able to get to know people through the years. It's not just football. Basketball has some of this as well. It is just, you don't have time to be a human. And for anybody who has a family and that family wants to have a human as a husband and a father, it can be a little bit miserable. So
yeah. It's not about playing golf. Like it's the whole thing. Like it's more stress, more stress in some areas because it is the NFL. It's the pro. It's the highest level. Heck of a lot less stress in your day-to-day life. I would think so.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I posted this on the message board the other day. It's interesting to see how these guys, like, it, to me, that it seems like a very stark contrast between head coaching track guys who are willing to put in that time and willing to do those different things to elevate and to climb the ladder, versus if you're a position coach and you want to be a position coach and that's not something that you aspire to change to become a head coach. I mean, it just, the NFL would appear to be fairly intriguing and appealing.
And it's worth saying, these guys are well compensated. Absolutely. But you can get a similar level of compensation for the pro job. And that kind of makes sense. Like it's not, we're not saying feel bad for the coaches. This is a choice and they got into this and everything like that. But at the same time, like there's a lot that comes along with it that you just don't think about other than being out there 13 Saturdays or whatever a year.
There is a massive difference between the guy making $8.5 million a year and the guy's making $500,000 a year. And I know, I mean, certainly I understand that $500,000 is still a lot of money, but if you are working essentially or effectively 2.5 jobs to get there, the compensation level doesn't seem quite as appealing. Anyway,
yeah.
Gronky, could you envision? Here we go. Okay, so this is, I don't know if I'm going to read the whole thing. Could you envision a scenario in a few years when players unionize and are deemed employees versus students that they're no longer guaranteed the full 4 years of a scholarship and instead seem as yearly employees with contracts that need to be renewed? Also, would it change injury reports based on that new structure? What's the future of college football look like? That's the question.
Yeah, it's a very good question because I don't think anybody has a great answer for it. I think collective bargaining comes into it eventually. TV money is the thing that I keep going back to. Is you're making $1 billion. You can split that up and make that work. The unionizing, the employees, all that kind of stuff. That's a lot to be worked out, and I don't know how long it's going to take. But it's certainly something to look at. I will say with the injury reports, I'm very curious to see how much legalized gambling has to deal with that. Like that's a big business. And that is something where it's not like shady guy in an alley anymore. It is like promotional name sponsors that can sponsor your conference. They can sponsor your television deals. They can sponsor, the networks. So that is the interesting thing to me, not so much from a like standardized perspective, because no coach wants to give out that a guy has a hangnail. Like that's the nature of college football coaches that want to control as much as they control. Will they be made to do this? I don't know. And that's tough, man. Cause that's going to change a lot for a lot of coaches. Yeah.
I mean, who knows, right? Who knows? The one thing that's been consistent from James Franklin on this topic is simply that if someone is doing it, it has to be everyone. It has to be all of college football, not even just the Big Ten, because, right. And he's talked about this with a lot of things. It's if you're a conference, or a conference commissioner, or the people who make decisions within a conference, your responsibility is to position the conference to be competitive and to
not
right?
put yourself at a competitive disadvantage by doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is why things like scheduling standardization, injury report, like all of those different things fall under that umbrella of, hey, why would you do anything that doesn't put you in the best spot to compete nationally? Certainly the response to that is $1 billion television contract.
That's a hell of a response.
9-game slate. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, I mean, even right now are 4 to 5 years of a scholarship actually guaranteed at this point?
I think it's year to year, but no, it's
that's what I'm saying. It's already not there.
Yeah.
So
you make an interesting point with scheduling standards, because people get upset when Penn State schedules Maine or whoever. It's just the first thing that came to me. But Penn State, I don't think most of these schools want to schedule the big boys, because it puts them at a competitive disadvantage if they lose that game. And, all of a sudden that's the tiebreaker between a 10-2 team that wants to get in the playoff. Now we're talking about the normal playoff factor. So I just think it's interesting when you talk about the standards. It's like, why would you do that if it's going to, if not everybody is made to do that?
Yeah. And
I expected more from you than, just so you know, because I know I've heard you talk about this before.
Yeah, but you're doing a really nice job yourself. So,
thank you.
We'll move on. Philip in the Valley, our guy. What's with the flurry of D-line offers in the days after John Scott left?
All right. I love this question because it popped up a few times on our message boards. And who's putting out these offers? Well, it's the recruiting staff. It's Kenny Sanders. It's Alan Zamitis. So you've got different camps in that building. You've got the recruiting office. You've got the coaching staff. They, for the most part, they agree on a lot of things, but there's disagreement between, there's disagreements between guys in the recruiting staff that get these tapes first, and to get a little bit more of the in-deep evaluations and things like that before it gets to the coaching staff. And then there's disagreements between the recruiting staff and the coaching staff, and this is not like, yelling at each other, all that kind of stuff. It's like,
I hate you.
Yes, exactly. So you've got these disagreements. So there might be guys on the fence, like the recruiting staff might like this guy, and the coaching and John Scott Jr. may not have liked this guy. So now you've got a little bit of a gray area, a little bit of an opportunity if you're a recruiting staff to get out and just, throw your name in the hat, because these offers don't mean as much anymore, but they mean even less when you don't offer the kid. So you're seeing these offers go out to guys that you thought, maybe one guy liked, maybe another guy didn't like. And it's kind of just getting in there just in case the new guy comes in and wants to pursue this guy. You're already in there. So that's kind of where they're standing with that. It's nothing to read into. It happens like everywhere. I think they offered a receiver, when there was no receivers coach. Like, that's kind of how this stuff works. So I think it's a sense of the recruiting staff saw some guys they liked, and they decided to move on them and made it happen. And I don't think there's there's not much more to it than that.
LB Lion, moving on. Who runs the fastest 40 at the combine? Tig, Parker Washington, or Joey Porter Jr.? Or PJ Mustafer?
Yeah, could be PJ. Thanks to Andrew Callahan sent us some stuff on PJ yesterday from the combine. But I would go with, if everyone is running, and that's never a guarantee. Parker Washington had a leg injury late in the season, so is he ready to run right now? I don't know. I haven't seen anything that would indicate that he is one way or the other. Tig Brown, I think, is going to have to run because he's a guy that you're wondering, is he a 4.6 guy? Is he a 4.4 guy? It's hard to say. I think that Joey would run the fastest. Joey was much faster when he arrived than people thought. Like, he ran in the high the high 4.4s. I think it was 4.47. And that really surprised some people, considering his build, considering that they thought he was a 4.6 guy coming in. So can't help but think that he's gotten faster. So I think he's going to surprise some people. If he runs over 4 or under 4.5, I think he's a lock for the first round in that metric. But we'll see if he's able to go. But I think if you lined all these three guys up on their best day, I think Porter would probably come out ahead because he's just a little bit faster. But I mean, all fast guys, all productive players. So I don't think that's I don't think there's a ton of difference there between those three.
Sure, I'm with you.
Great.
Miller 22. Does Penn State's pro day time? We're going to stick with the 40 here. Does Penn State's pro day time? Does Penn State's pro day time the 40? Yeah, I know it's just a little bit different emphasis. The exact same way the NFL Combine does. Rumors were Penn State's track was fast, but I think that was an old track.
Yes, I believe technology has come a long way. It's not quite as fast as Virginia Tech's track used to be, which they used to have guys in the 4.2s regularly. But yeah, I believe, and this might be outdated. So the NFL Combine does a laser start and a laser finish. I believe Penn State does the hand start with the laser finish. So very close on times, but the laser obviously is going to be the most accurate for the NFL Combine. So Penn State's times have been very good in terms of accurately, putting them side by side. You remember Chris Godwin went to the combine and ran really well. Well, that was very close to his Penn State time. I think it actually may have been just above or just below his Penn State time. So the times for Penn State, when you're talking about like winter testing and things like that, the stuff that we get and report, actually pretty accurate, compared to the general college football landscape. So Penn State does a really good job of timing their guys to get the math right, getting multiple watches on them and trying to figure out where that time actually is. And I think they've done a really good job with that in the past and have been more accurate than most. I'll say that.
Yeah, this is just a brief aside, but they work on it. They focus on running the 40. They focus on these times and these different drills that you're going to eventually see in the combine or in a pro day situation. So all the numbers are good. Right? I mean, they've just done a really nice job testing based on that standard that they've put into it. Big Chungus 44 asks, since the season ended, what has changed for you that, number one, you're relatively much more optimistic about for 2023, and number two, feel is a bigger concern than previously thought? Let's start with one.
Okay, that's a good place to start. I'm going to go with wide receiver. I'm probably falling into a trap here because I told myself after the season there's a lot to work on, and they were struggling in the portal for a while, and then things moved very fast, and they did a really, really good job of retooling and restocking a guy that we think is going to be ready right away in Cephas, and a guy that might be ready and might be further along than we thought in Malik McLean. So I think I've talked myself into being more optimistic about the receivers. I still want to see them go out. Still want to see them catch the ball. Like, that's the thing. Like, we can hear about workouts. We can hear about the physical numbers and the testing numbers and everything like that. But you got to catch the ball. And that's kind of where I'm holding back on that group. But like, they got better in a short period of time, and they have the ability to catch up with the rest of some of those position groups that are already better than that wide receiver group. So I've talked myself into it. Maybe I'll talk myself out of it. Who's to say? But like, feel better about it than I do 2 months ago.
How about this? I'm gonna really curveball you here. I'll go with the linebackers. I just think in general that group will be fine. I know that there's a lot of consternation and there's plenty of reason to doubt, or have some misgivings, I would say, about what they have there at Mike. But I don't. I actually do think that you give Kobe King another year, right, of offseason development. Give Elsdon another offseason to continue his development. I just think that regardless of how it all shakes out, when you've got a guy in Curtis Jacobs who should have the opportunity to be at a position that he feels very comfortable in, most comfortable in this season, and Abdul Carter, you're going to come out feeling pretty good. That has an opportunity to be a really good group next year. What do you feel is a bigger concern than you previously thought?
I'll go with leadership. Like, where's it coming from? Like, who are going to be the guys that step up? I know we've talked about this before, especially on the site. But like the reason Penn State did what they did last season, they did not fold down the stretch. I know they didn't win the big games that people wanted them to win in the season, but in the past that has led to them folding and ending up in a lower tier bowl. They were able to rebound. They were able to do so because of Sean Clifford and Tig Brown and Jonathan Sutherland, and some of those guys that are now out the door. PJ Mustapher, obviously. So like that was a really, really good group of leaders, and now all of a sudden it's a fresh start. I know that's college football. It's the cycle that we always talk about, and you're going to have to find some of those things. And you've heard good things about the guys stepping up, but like that's a lot to take on for guys to make that leap, especially. I mean, like you had Sean Clifford was four-time captain, was it? John Sutherland was a multiple-time captain. So you had guys in that role for so long and so comfortable in that role that you now have to dig that out in one off season, and that could take longer than you want.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll just expand on that briefly. I feel I'm not going to say less optimistic, but I do think that receiver is still a concern. I think that all of the offense, let's just expand it, right? Like just figuring out the offense, what you're doing at quarterback, no matter who the quarterback is, you're going to have a first-year starter there. So a first-year starter who not only is a first-year starter, but is also 19 years old, right? So just doesn't have the reps, doesn't have the chops, doesn't have all of that background, that wealth of years of practice reps to build on and collaborate, right? Get all of that together. I mean, it's so cliche, but like the gelling with the receivers, all of those aspects, I think are just up in the air right now. So is it a bigger concern than I thought it was on January 1st? No, but the same. Right. I mean, I still think it's something that is going to be watched, and there's just there's a lot of runway for this group to get better, right? For this group to put it together between now and next season. Beaverman 72, more likely to be a spring practice standout, Malik McLean at wideout or one of the redshirt freshman receivers?
I'll go McLean. I think, he's physically there. The guys that you're talking about, the redshirt freshman, Caden Saunders has an opportunity to do that. Like I said, it's going to depend on what Penn State does ahead of him in the slot with Keandre Lambert-Smith, but heard good things about Liam Clifford as well. So I think the impact, the ceiling impact of Malik McLean is a higher potential right there. Tyler Johnson, I think, is still catching up in terms of speed of the game. And, that was a big jump that he made from rural Southern Virginia to the Big Ten. So I think that McLean is the easy answer here, and it's the one I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I'm no disagreement. Chester Copperpot, we're wrapping up here. Chester Copperpot had a couple of questions. We're going to go with the second because we like it more. Speed seems to be a concern within the wide receiver room. If Nick Singleton develops more into a receiving threat, could he provide that speed element in the passing game, either out of the backfield or split out in the slot?
Okay, so Nick Singleton is very good at football. You have detailed this in great detail. He learned a lot of things as a freshman. You could see visible progress of him as an inside runner, like as the games went on. And then obviously at the end of the season, did a nice job with that. So now that you've got him not up to speed, like he's not as good as he's going to be, I don't think, because he has all that potential in the world. But now that you've been able to get him as a complete running back, the next step is obviously, using him as a complete weapon. And so to me, he takes a step this year toward their use of Saquon. Like that is the blueprint. That is what it's going to be. Like you're going to figure out, or you're going to compare him to Saquon, then we're going to try and figure out how many things he can do like Saquon. So I think that this is the year that you can take that step and you can move him around. And I'm not necessarily, they've got two really, really good sophomore running backs. So get those guys on the field as much as possible. But I think this is a year that you can make him split out. You can put him in motion. It's more so putting him in motion than splitting him out. You saw at the end of the year that they would throw screens to him and get him out wide and things like that because he is so explosive. He is so, I don't want to say he's the most elusive guy out there, but he's a guy that can cut your defense up. So yes, I think this is the next step in the evolution to using him like you used Saquon Barkley. James Franklin is going to romanticize using guys like that. He's going to remember using Chris Godwin. He's going to remember using Mike Gesicki. He wants to use his tools that he has now like the best of the ones that he's had in the past. And so this is the opportunity to take the next step to making him Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and here's a I don't know if it's actually a nugget for you or not, but I when they made the freshman available earlier in February, I was with Nick, and it was like, hey, does it frustrate you? Because he pointed to it. He was just like, I got to catch the ball better. I got to be able to catch the ball.
Yep.
And that was like his major thing to improve. But nugget, he said that Franklin encouraged him to spend more time with the receivers than the running backs. He was like, don't run running back routes, run receiver routes. Like get reps catching the ball from the receiver position, spend time with the receivers. And so that was something that should feel like deja vu, because it is deja vu. That's exactly what Saquon Barkley talked about, during his development. So like, there's no mystery here. It's something that he wants to get better at. It's something that he believes, and the program obviously believes, can be added to his repertoire and make him even more dangerous as an offensive weapon than he already is.
And an excellent point there, that he needs to catch the ball. That was not pretty sometimes when he went out to catch the ball. So he works on that. He has the opportunity to get where he needs to be as a receiver. It's just a matter of catch the ball. So if he does that puts him in a really dangerous position. You can ask TJ Watt, one of the best players in the NFL, how hard it is to guard a guy like that, because he has lived it. So yeah, it gives you so many out, like the tight ends. You can line them up all over the field, gives you so many options. And if you got him, use it, because he's not gonna be around forever.
And it's different, right? I mean, that's a key point there. It is different catching a swing pass, which again, he will be called upon to do, but also being out in space and running at a traditional receiver route, which are things that I think he's going to be asked to do next season. So good on you, Chester Copperpot. Fitz, that's it.
Okay, we did it. Thanks, Chester. Chester's great.
Thanks, Chester.
Yeah, we did it. We only talked 2 minutes of basketball, so if you scrub through the first couple of minutes of that, I think we got some good football content in. Again, we have our open workout that will be done by the time this airs, so I'm not even sure why I'm putting this out there, but check us out, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Like our stuff, follow our stuff. The off-season coverage, I think, been very good, worth checking out. So for Nate, I am Sean. I think we'll close out the episode, and we'll catch you again.